This open letter is for Steven Nejad, my cousin. Steven, I'm not sure. I'm disappointed in you interfering and making a comment some time ago, and still I feel that you haven't got the full picture, and I'm disappointed in the sense that not having the full picture, why would you give yourself permission to make a comment or have an opinion? You're only allowed to have an opinion as any intelligent person would know that you're only allowed to have an opinion regarding a subject if you are fully informed regarding different aspects of a subject. And once that happens, you can form an opinion. And unless you're not fully informed about every aspect of a subject, forming an opinion is just foolish. It's just foolish. So, that said, I have to give you a better picture of the situation, a fuller picture. One of the earlier memories that I have is from when I was 5 or 6. We were at this beachside resort. We didn't have a villa by the sea, Caspian Sea. Manuchehri Rampur had a villa, and a couple of other more distant family members. So between all these couple of villas that were available, our family was also invited to join them in north of Iran by the Caspian Sea for a few days at the end of the summer. I was like 5 or 6 years old. Not more than that, because I know I was 5 or 6 because soon after the Islamic Revolution took place, and after the Islamic Revolution took place, people stopped going by the Caspian Sea because you couldn't go in the water, because women were not allowed into the water, and there were the music was prohibited, and singing and drinking, everything was prohibited after the Islamic Revolution. So people stopped going to the Caspian Sea to the beachside resorts because you couldn't do much. You had to, sit around and enjoy the cool air. That's about it. So what happened is that I was 5 or 6, right before a year or so before revolution, and what I do remember is like we were sitting on a bicycle, me and my father, we were sitting on a bicycle, and along with a couple of other family members, Manuchehri Rampur and some of his sisters, and my sister, who was 13 years older than me. But I was sitting, as a 6-year-old, I was sitting in what is common, I was sitting in the front metal bar, the middle metal bar of my father's bicycle, the bicycle that he was riding on. I was sitting on that metal bar, sideways, as they sit a small kid there. And my father was pedaling, next to him was my sister, and next to her was Manucheri Rampur and some of his siblings, his sisters. He doesn't have any brothers. We were going down, and why I remember this incident is because I do remember that I was sliding down this metal pole farther and farther as a 5, 6 year old. I couldn't, get a grip. I was sliding farther and farther down, and a couple of times I turned up and looked at my father, and I didn't, he wasn't there, he wasn't paying attention, and he was just talking with my sister and Manucher and his sisters. And at one point I had slid down so far that my foot got stuck in the propellers of the front wheel, and the whole bike turned over, and me and my father, we both went flying down, flipped over. And I was hurt a little, doesn't matter. My father was hurt a little, doesn't matter. But I remember that as a 5, 6 year old, I was strongly reprimanded for why that happened. I was strongly reprimanded for what had happened. And as a 6 year old, I'm not sure if I could have defended myself in any way. A few days later or before, this one I'm not sure, but I think it was in the same trip. Again, I was 5, 6. Same trip. A few days later or before, I believe it was the same trip, that we were at the beach. Everybody was in the water swimming. As a 5, 6 year old, I also went to the water. Nobody said why. Nobody was actually concerned. So I was by myself and I couldn't swim. I was near them, but as I was gulping water, gulping for air and trying to keep my head above water, at some point I had gone too far and I couldn't reach the top of the water. I was walking over the sand and I couldn't reach the top, and I was just jumping up trying to catch some air and try to pull myself towards the beach, towards where it's more shallow. But I had difficult time moving through water as a 5, 6 year old, and I couldn't swim. I didn't know how. I was too weak. And I had raised my hand, and I could hear my father and my sister, and again Manucheri Rampul and a couple of her sisters around me, but nobody actually apparently saw my hand. There was one person who saw my hand, who was sitting on the beach with her own son, with her, because she understood that her son was the same age as mine, maybe a year younger. So she was sitting there with her son because she obviously knew that her son was her responsibility. Her 6-year-old, her 5-year-old son was her responsibility. That person was one of Manucher's. The reason I reference Manucher is because I understand you have spoken to Manucher between your father's side of the family. Manucher is one of the few people you know. So that's why I'm referencing Manuchehri Rampur often, because that's the one you know. One of his sisters, by the name of Iran, was sitting on the beach, and his son, Sam, who was a year or two younger than me, she was holding on to him and playing with him, and like a mother should, paying attention to such a young child. As opposed to my situation where I was left alone, left to be, left to fend for myself. So she saw my hand, and I was almost gone, just gulping for air and drinking lots of seawater. And she finally saw my hand, and she thank God, or maybe if she would have let me drown at that point, it would have saved a lot of headache for many years for me. But she didn't. She got up, and holding on to her own young son, Sam, she walked through the water and grabbed my hand and pulled me to the beach. And I turned around, and I saw nobody else still bothered to look. Everybody else was, playing around and screaming, and nobody, even afterward, nobody bothered to, nobody was very bothered about the matter. Even after they heard, nobody really was really bothered. Here's the situation, Stephen. The reason I told you these two stories that I recently remembered from early childhood is this. To cut this long story short, my father had this sexual perversion, a version of Oedipus complex, a variety in which the daughter and the father are attracted, or the father is attracted to his daughter. It's a variety, a version of the Oedipus complex. My father was highly attracted to my sister. Now, whether he had acted upon his attraction when she was younger, he had molested her, he had raped her, or not, we don't know. But what we do know is this attraction that my father felt for his own daughter. Which was present all through his life. And my mother, my poor mother, she didn't want to recognize this, so she went along with it. But at the same time, apparently when she was younger, she felt the need to compete with my sister for my father's attention. When she got older, she was basically, she accepted to, sit back and leave the field to my sister for my father's attention. And she basically, as a broken woman, she accepted her second class place in our family, and became a sort of like half wife, half servant to my father. And she basically stood back and let my father, be with my sister. But the thing is, when I was 5, 6 years old, that was the time that my mother was actually trying to, compete with my sister for my father's attention. How old was my sister at that time? Let's I was, let's say, 6 years old with 13 years age difference. That makes my sister 19. You see what I'm saying? So let's say 18, 19, 20. This is the time that the girl is fresh, everything is tight. So imagine that my father, I'm assuming since she was like 14, 15, he was attracted, he started becoming attracted to her. And this has continued all through his life. And imagine that, and at that time, my father, he was 50 when he had me. So he was like 55, 56 when my sister was 20. So you see, in Iran, 20, 30 years age difference between a man and the subject of his affections is okay. It's a backward brown country. 20, 30 years age difference is not shameful. Still, people at 60, at 70, at 80, they still desire an 18-year-old pussy. That's how brown people are. That's how the mentality is over there. With no shame, no inhibitions, they still desire a 20-year-old pussy at 70. And even when they get it, the society doesn't, reprimand them, doesn't say anything, doesn't turn the other way. It's okay. They encourage him. Man. Good for you. You got a 20-year-old pussy, you old man. Good for you. It's like, it's an achievement. That's how they are. That's how we are. Brown people. Stupid. Low IQ. So, he had this affection for my sister, this perversion towards my sister. At the younger age, when my mother was younger, she was trying to compete. Obviously, she was unsuccessful. My mother was, I believe, 10 years or 15 years younger than my father. But still, when he was 55, she would be 40. But her daughter is 20, so a 20-year-old pussy is much more preferable to a 40-year-old. So as far as my father is concerned, as far as the brown people of my country are concerned. So I'm not sure if my father at a very young age has raped my sister or has molested my sister. What I do know is that ever since I remember, from age 5 or 6, that I have memories, my sister used to lock her room, whether she was in the house or she was out, whether she was in her room or she was outside the house, she always locked her room, locked her door. Now question comes to mind, why does a daughter need to lock her room? Does she feel unsafe in the house? Does she feel insecure in the house? This is her own house. This is her own tribe. This is her own family. They all carry the same last name. Why would the daughter, why would one of the siblings in this house feel the need to lock herself in her room even when she sleeps? Again, we don't know what my father had done to her when she was a kid. Maybe she locked her room because of feeling insecure, because she was raped, she was molested when she was very young, and she felt insecure. She felt the need to lock her room when she slept. Oh well, she locked her room when she left the house. That's because I guessed because she had all this perks of from my father, all these goodies that my father lavished on her, which he didn't give 1/5 of what he used to give to Vida to any of us, me, my brother, or my mother. So I guess by locking her door when she left the house it was one way of she protecting all these gifts that my father used to give her, protect these gifts against his brothers and against her mother, against everybody else. It's lock up the gifts or lock up all the perks that she was getting from my father. But that doesn't explain why she feels the need to lock her door when she's sleeping in that room. That again seems to me an obvious telltale sign of her insecurities, physical insecurities, mental insecurity. So what I'm trying to say is the reason for one, now that you look back at it with a hindsight, it's obvious that the reason for my neglect at 5, 6, which the kid needs the most attention, was that my father was, this is what you can tell from hindsight, that my father was so infatuated with my sister that he was, all his mind was there. I mean, he couldn't see his son sliding down the pole because he was looking at his daughter sliding down the pole until his foot got stuck in the bicycle propeller. He was not there. His mind was somewhere else. This is a 5-year-old kid. I mean, you want to, is sitting on a metal bar in front of your bike. As a father, you would think that the person would be, full attention. No such thing. So, and on the other hand, the neglect from my mother's side was because she was trying to compete with her own daughter for her husband's attention. It's obvious. So fuck the 5-year-old. He will find his way somehow. Let me see if I can, if I can keep my husband. Something like that. We're talking about Woody Allen territory. It's just that perverse and that ugly. It's not unprecedented. That's what I'm saying. It happens a lot. Many people keep it quiet. Some people, it comes out, like if it's a celebrity like Woody Allen or Trump. It's obvious that he has some affection for his daughter, unusual affection for his daughter. Somebody I saw on the internet called her daughter/girlfriend of Trump, referring to Ivanka Trump. So this is what has happened. Neglect from my father's side because he was too infatuated with my sister, and neglect from my mother's side because my mother was trying to compete with my sister in attracting my father. Now this wasn't just for me, this was before me, this was for my brother. Same situation with my brother. And he was neglected the same way. How do I know this? I know this because at different points, just imagine that although me and my brother have 11 years age difference, but at the same times in our life, almost the same times in our life, we had reached the same conclusion. For example, at about age 15, both of us, in different times, with 11 age difference, but still both of us at around age 15, had started asking questions from our family, our father, that whether we had been adopted. He apparently had asked my father if he has been adopted, and I have asked my father that whether I'm a bastard, whether my mother had slept with somebody else, that's why I'm being neglected. No money, no funds, no perks, no nothing. I gotta go fuck myself and my sister with all the perks. Uh, so when you have two different people with such an age difference reaching the same conclusion, you gotta realize something is definitely wrong in that household. And that's the situation. So our story goes way, way, way back from the beginning. From the moment you are conscious, you realize you're in a fucked up situation. And what happens is all through these years, this situation continues, just like as you noticed. My father thought with $3,000 he can get me out of his life, send me across the ocean, so I wouldn't come back with $3,000. And once I reach your house, my father decided not a penny more he's going to spend in my life, for my life, not a penny more. So for 3 years I was living in your house, and then the boarding school, and being treated like shit in your household, and to no avail, no result, nothing. He wouldn't give your father any money for my expenses, and your father, your parents, your family kept treating me like shit, hoping that I would give up, throw in the towel, and ask to be sent back to Iran. I didn't. I endured the shit that you guys threw at me, and my father didn't give in to spend any money. So eventually, you guys send me back. Be it in a very conniving, shitty manner. From my experience in that house, from what you know of experience that I had in your household, you can probably tell one of the reasons I was able to endure that humiliation that your family put me through and didn't make a peep. The main reason I was able to endure that humiliation and that lack of attention and that fucked up situation was because it was the same in my household. I was treated the same humiliation. My father's basically idea of raising his sons was that you have to humiliate them to the point of submission. You have to break them. His daughter, no, that's he was licking her pussy from when she was like two. But his sons, he was of the idea that you have to humiliate your sons to the point of submission. No funds, no money, no expenses, and humiliate the shit out of them. Because again, in a patriarchal society where the father feels some affection for his own daughter, he feels, I mean, when a man is so fucked up in his mind that he feels affection for his own daughter, on the same turn, he would consider his own sons as potential adversaries for his affections. You see what I'm saying? All through our life, our father has been looking at me and my brother in turn as competitors for the affections of the two women in his life, my mother and my sister. And his job was to, confront us and beat us down and confront us and humiliate us and confront us. I remember a few times during lunch, once a week, we had lunch together. The rest of the week we weren't eating together, but once a week on Fridays, that was a holiday in Iran, we would eat together. And I remember me and my brother on different occasions, couple of times, he started beating us right in the middle of lunch. We were sitting and having lunch, and for frivolous reasons, don't ask for what reason, was bullshit to begin with, the reasoning. But I mean, what could a son do or say that in the middle of lunch the father gets up and starts beating the shit out of the son? I remember in my instance was I was like 6 years old. I remember this because my brother was still in Iran. I was 6 or 7 when my brother left Iran. So I was 6. I remember my brother was there, and I was passing at 6. I wasn't paying attention. Apparently, I nicked the back of my grandfather. A very I'm saying nicked because it didn't hurt me, and I was 6, so I couldn't have been I couldn't have hit him with my leg that hard. So apparently I was running and I passed from the behind my grandfather, and apparently I nicked his back with the side of my foot. And my grandfather made the noise sort of like, oh, something like that. And my father got up and started beating the crap out of me. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You're beating a crap out of a 6-year-old in the middle of the only lunch that the only time the whole family is together during the week for a fucking lunch, and you start beating the crap out of your 6-year-old just because he was passing and he happened to nick the back of your grandfather. And just a reprimand wouldn't do, just a hey, say sorry to your grandfather wouldn't do, hey, this or that wouldn't do. You have to beat the crap out of a 6-year-old. So I remember once, I even remember he right in the middle of this another lunch on the Friday that we had, I remember him getting up, my father getting up and beating the crap out of my brother for some other frivolous reason. That he ate the bread wrong, that he first cleared his lips with the bread, then put it in his mouth. Some frivolous reason like that. So this just shows that the degree of perversion in my father's mind, that he was competing for my sister's affection and my mother's affection, and at the same token that he thought has the right to compete for my sister's affection, on the same token he saw us, me and my brother, as the two other males in that family, as his opponents, as his enemy, as his competitors. And the result was that he used to beat the crap out of us for no fucking reason, left and right and center. Used to neglect us because he was paying too much attention to one side, to my sister, because of his infatuation, and neglecting the others back here because they're males and they're competitors and they can go fuck themselves. I like to pay for that pussy. So the result is this, and all step by step as we grew in our life, we grew up, her perks and her gifts and her perks and her whatever you want to call them got bigger and bigger and more expensive. as she grew, as my sister grew, and our share, me and my brother's share of the family pie, got smaller and smaller and smaller, and basically, you guys go fuck yourselves. This was what my father had in mind for us. And that's why you see that there are too many similarities between my life and my brother's life. My brother had to leave Iran with through the back door when he was 18. If my father would have invested some money in his future, he could have, found a good people smuggler, go to Europe directly from Iran or directly from Turkey, go directly to Europe or go directly to Canada. All that was needed was a little investment by the father in his child, in his son. But he didn't. He said, you can go through the back door, you want to run away from the war, you go to Pakistan. I don't have any money. So my brother basically bought a bus ticket and he went to Pakistan, and after that my father never sent him any money. He would just lie. Many times after that he would tell me that, yeah, some money, I have sent some money to your brother, but once I spoke to my brother, and he's basically crying his eyes out, and he's telling me that he never ever sent any money except that, like, something like $3,000. One time my mother had gone to France to see him, and she had taken $3,000 to him. My father never went to see my brother, didn't give a fuck, never wanted to see him, never want to hear from him. I've seen the letters that my brother used to send my father begging him for help. Begging, I mean, I'm talking about 11-page letters, very small handwriting at the time, but when there was the phone was expensive and internet was unavailable and the phone was expensive, calling long distance was expensive. I remember seeing 11-page, 15-page letters begging my father for money. Letter after letter after letter, not one, not two. We're talking about, I must have seen something like 50 letters during the 10 years that my brother was in need of some funds to go fuck himself, to go study, to do something, to get out of France, because France, from Pakistan, he had to go, he found, I don't know whose dick he sucked, because he didn't have any money. So I don't know whose dick he sucked. In turn, he found a way to reach France, and in France, there is no work in France, especially for a refugee. In France, 80% of people are on the dole, or they're on subsidies, or are subsidized living by the government, and there are very few jobs available, especially at that time, available, and that's for the French citizens. So if you're illegal in France, or even half legal in France, and you're not a citizen, you can't find a job selling yourself. There's so many asses available, you can't even sell yourself. So, and my father never ever wanted to give a fuck. He just looked at his son as his competitors. It's like, we are competing. What the fuck are we competing? You see what I'm saying? He looked at his sons as his adversaries. He never lost a chance to beat us down. He never lost a chance to humiliate us. And as in my case, as you remember, for 3 years you were giving me hell over there. Your family was giving me hell over there, and my father didn't budge. Didn't feel that he should spend a penny on me. again, it's not because he didn't have a penny. Tell you what, when you send me back from United States back to Iran, within a year, we sold our house, the bigger house that we were living in. We sold it. He sold it. He moved me and my mother to a smaller house. He gave half of the money from that house to my sister as a gift to go and buy a house for herself and that Muslim guy so they can live in their own house. Years later, maybe 4 or 5 years later, I turned to him. I needed some money to, get out of Iran. So I turned to my father and said, okay, can you lend me some money? I want to get out of this country. I just did my military service. I want to get out. I'm gonna find, a people smuggler, somehow find my way to Canada. And can you lend me a little money so I can get out of this hellhole? And he said, I don't have any money. I'm like, and I was like, are you serious? Let's assume that you don't have any savings. Let's assume that you don't have any savings. You have all this income from our orchards. Let's assume that is not that much either. You have sold couple of pieces of the land of that belong to our orchards. There is that money. And just recently, like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you sold our big house, and with half of that money you bought the smaller house. Where did the other half go? I just need a little piece of that to find my way and, go and make my future where I think it's more reasonable, gives better chance, where I have a better chance of building a future for myself. I just need a little piece of that. And he said, no, it's gone. I said, what do you mean it's gone? You, with half of the money of our first house, you bought this house. There is all half of that money left. Where the fuck did it go? He said, oh, expenses, and I spent a little on your sister's wedding, and I sent some to your brother, and he was lying the whole time. He didn't send any money to my brother, and my sister's wedding took place in our smaller house, in the second house that was smaller. That was her wedding venue, so no money was spent on the venue either, and the catering was average. So what has happened is half of the money from the first house was given to my sister to buy her own house, and nothing of it was left. So I said to my father, I said, Dad, you do understand you have 3 kids. You do understand that when you get any money, when some money comes in, you have to divide it by 3, and not give all of it to one of your children, but divide it by 3, and if one of your children needs money right now, you give that portion to that child, and you keep the other 2 portions for your other children for when they need it. I was explaining the way to fucking run a family. When I was like 19, I was explaining to a fucking 65-year-old how he should run a family. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, I made a mistake. Yeah, I made a mistake. I'm like, what do you mean you made a mistake? So what have you set aside for me? I want to, go and make a life for myself. I just need a little push from you. And he said, yeah, I made a mistake. There's nothing left. when I stuck to it and I kept questioning him and questioning him and questioning him, finally he said, and I quote, he said, when I said, where am I supposed to, get some money to get, to have a push in life, he said, I thought when you need money, God will help. When I said, why didn't you leave some for me and you spend it all on my sister, his response was, I spend it all on your sister and I thought once you need money, God will help as well. God will help. To which I answered, are you fucking kidding me? So my sister has a father and I have God? It was laughable. I was mad and I was humored. I was humored that how big of a fucking liar my father is and why he thinks I'm such a fool, or what an asshole he is, why he's discriminating this much between his children, why is he, at that time I didn't realize that he's infatuated. I still couldn't accept. You don't want to accept that your father has romantic feelings towards your sister. You don't want to accept that. It's ugly, it's dirty, it's unacceptable, but it's true. So all through his life, whenever we needed money, my father would, tell me and my brother that, fuck you, I don't have money. Sorry. Ask God for help. Or in case of my brother, first he sent him to knocking on your door, your father's door, and our other uncle's door, knocking on your door for help, money to, get a push in life, which your family and Iraj's family turned him down until he got married and somebody else paid for his education. And in my case, I couldn't find God to get help from him, and I guess I was the one who had to actually go fuck himself. So, and this idea about India, which they have told you something or other, India cost $15,000. 15000. That's 5,000, 10,000, $15,000. What my father has given my sister, not considering half of our first house that he gave him, just recently, from the sale of our second house, from the sale of our orchards, from his cash and his gold that our family had accumulated through the years, my father has given my sister $1.5 million. 1.5 is 100 times bigger than $15,000. 1.5 is bigger than $15,000. 1.5 million is 100 times. So basically, the cost of my India travel was 100th of what my father had given to my sister. 100th. 1%. Basically, you can say 1%. Yeah, the cost of Indian education was $4,000 a year. That's why my father said, yeah, okay, whatever. He had given something like half the price of our first house, something like, let's say, $300,000 to my sister once he sold our first house. And now that he sold our second house, he has given my sister $600,000. From our orchards, he has given my sister $300,000. from his savings and his gold and whatever else that we had, our family has had, he's given my sister another $300,000. So all in all, my sister has accumulated, and from the sale, if we consider the $300,000 from the sale of our first house, which went to my sister has accumulated something about around $2 million, $1.8 million from our household towards herself. And it's just, and she has only been taking care of my father only during the past 10 years. All through her life, until she was 31 years old, that when she was living in our house, she never even bothered to, hand my father a glass of water. Me and my brother was working in our family business and still getting beaten up and humiliated. My sister was the queen, never worked in our orchards, in our family business, or in our household. He didn't give a flying fuck towards anybody in the house, even my father. And she got all the perks. And after that, when she got married, she became that Muslim boy's slave. She became, his housekeeper and his washer and his dryer and his nanny. Still, she wouldn't give a flying fuck towards our household or this father that we had. Still, my mother died when I was 19. So for the next 10, 11, 12 years, I was taking care of my father. Still, she wouldn't give a flying fuck. Just during the past 10 years, my sister decided that now is the time to pull my father towards herself, and then lock the door. My sister, for the past 10 years, my sister hasn't allowed my father to, make a call or answer a call from me. Not that my father was really enthusiastic to begin with to have any contact with his sons. He wasn't interested. Remember when I was 13 at your house, 13, 14, and my father he wasn't the one calling to find out how am I doing. Do you remember? Every time when I was at the school, nobody called. When at the boarding school, nobody called. When I was at your house, nobody called. I used to receive once every 6 months, I used to receive a letter, and that's what that letter didn't ask how you're doing, son. It was always during the whole letter, it was my father was writing that you should do whatever they ask you to do. Bend over, let them fuck you, do whatever they want. You're their burden. Don't say no to anything. Do whatever the fuck they want you to do. Instead of sending money, he was basically teaching his son how to be a good servant. Never wanted to know how I'm doing. Who cares? Who gives a fuck? Always giving me advice on how I should behave as a good servant, as a burden to your family, how I should behave myself so you guys wouldn't send me back because I was a burden to your family, because he wasn't paying for my existence. So this was the situation. This was the situation. When I got back, it was the same thing. Again, as I told you, give the money from the sale of our house to my sister so she can buy a house. Then he sold parts of the orchards that we had. Give more money to my sister so she can change her house and buy a bigger house. And all the while, whenever we asked money, he never had money. Me and Farouk, after Farouk got married, he didn't ask for money, and he never wanted to see my father either. It's like, why would you want to see such a fucking asshole? A person who has denied you everything because he thought he's in competition with you. Why would you want to talk to this piece of shit? Same thing. At 31, I had to, run away from this fucking father with a little money that I'd stolen from the India money that you said, India expenses. Part of that $15,000, that saved my life. I was about to hang myself because of this fucking father. I took part of that money and I found the people smuggler and I ran out of Iran. Ran away from this fucking family, this fucking father, this piece of shit asshole, and this piece of shit sister. I mean, our sister, she it's amazing to me that she used to our sister used to, I remember now that she used to be so proud of herself that she had my father under her little finger. She proudly would state to her friends and her husband's side of the family that how our father was really good to her. And she used to be so proud of this fact that our father discriminated towards her, discriminated for her, and she was so special in his eyes. And now that you look back, it was sick. It was sick. A daughter being like Ivanka Trump. I mean, you see Ivanka Trump and how she basks in the attention that she's getting from her father, although I'm sure she realizes this attention is half sexual, half romantic. Anyway, it's ugly and it's dirty and it's unhealthy. She must know this. Only a stupid person would not realize that your father is looking at you in a certain way or saying certain things or having these Freudian slips. The other day in one of their interviews, they were asking Trump and his daughter, what do you have in common? The daughter said it's real estate and golf, and Trump suddenly says sex. Oh no, I should say I can't say. He says I can't say sex. It's a Freudian slip. It's like when he hears his daughter's name, sex comes to his mind. It's sort of like what's the first word that comes into your mind when I say such a word? I say Ivanka, you say sex. That's a giveaway of how you look at your daughter. Now, whether he had raped her or he had molested her or he had had sex with her when she was younger or she was a child, who knows? But the fact that a 70-year-old, when you state her daughter's name and the first word that comes to his mind is sex, is a dead giveaway. And in the case of my father, it's obvious. It's obvious. And the fact that my sister must have realized that this is a romantic feeling that he has towards her, and maybe he has raped her, maybe he hasn't. If he hadn't, first of all, if he had raped her or molested her when she was very young, it's immoral of her to blackmail him in order to get our share, me and my brother's share of whatever necessities of life. It's blackmailing our father to get our share, me and my brother's share of the necessities of life, or blackmailing my father for money and energy and attention and everything else. perks to get our share, blackmailing our father for our share just because our father had molested her. That's immoral, unconscionable. It's immoral. It's not right. It's not human. It's beastie. Bestiality is beastie. A beast does that. A mean piece of shit does that. Blackmailing a sexually perverse father in order to accumulate the shares of her siblings. That's one scenario. The other scenario is just understanding that your father is discriminating for you because he has romantic feelings towards you, and you state that as a positive point when you're talking to your friends and your classmates and your husband's family. You are proud of the fact that your father looks at you differently and discriminates on your behalf, and he adores you and he loves you. That's crazy. But I have actually seen my sister being proud of the fact that our father treats her different than us, than me and my brother. She's proud of the fact. She thought she's something amazing that our father treats her differently. Not real. I'm sure she had realized. I mean, you gotta be blind not to realize why he's treating you differently, because you got a pussy and the other two don't have a pussy, and he's a male and you're a female, and he gets a hard on every time you pass by, and you go up to him and you flirt with him, and he gives you whatever you want. Make it rain. Are you fucking kidding me? And the fact that my sister consider that as a positive point, and she is proud of the fact, and she tells everybody that my father now my father is my daddy, exactly like Ivanka, that at one point in a rally that Trump was saying, the parallels between that fucking family and our fucking family is so amazing that one becomes speechless. In one of his rallies, Trump was talking behind a microphone, talking to people, and in the middle of his sentence, something came up, and he said, "Yeah, Ivanka's with me, and before we were leaving, she came and said, Dad, oh no, he didn't. She didn't say Dad. She said Daddy. She said, Daddy, can I come with you? So yes, now Ivanka has come with me, and come, Ivanka, come, have a speak. Come and speak. Join me behind the microphone." The daughter not only is proud of the fact that his father is infatuated by her sexually, but she also encourages him. She teases him in order to get more, in order to carry more favor. That's exactly what my sister has been doing all her life. I remember that my father used to beat me, my brother, and my mother. My father used to beat my mother at least once every couple of months. Never my sister. I never saw my father raise his voice to my sister or beat my sister. Nothing, nada. And now I realize apparently my sister was the person who was, maybe persuading my father, manipulating my father against my mother as well. So some of the beatings that my mother also got was because of the manipulation that my father received from my sister. So it's a sad family when the father cannot keep his dick in his pants, and when the father of the family is so perverse and that he gets a hard on for his own daughter, and he feels romantic, has romantic feelings for his own daughter, and he doesn't inhibit himself, and he doesn't, his logical mind is not big enough to suppress his basic instincts. You see, many of us have many feelings that we shouldn't have, but that logical mind, that sense of control that comes about with the use of a logical mind, suppresses those feelings that we shouldn't have, or else the whole thing would be a fucking jungle. Fathers would be fucking their daughters all day long, all over. But there is a logical mind that has to suppress those perverse feelings. Unfortunately, my father, in brown people in general, that's lacking, and in case of my father, it was really lacking. So all his life he's been just discriminating in favor of my sister against me, my brother, and my mother, financially, attention wise, energy wise, time wise, everything wise. He just loves to spend time with my sister, doesn't give a fuck about, saying hi to his sons, unless he needs his sons. You see, my father didn't bother to, travel to see my brother or send money for my brother all his life, all the time that he was out of the country. But once he needed somebody to when he used to come here to renew his green card, when he needed to come to United States to renew his green card every year, he needed to, go to somebody's house, stay there, be taken care of, and he would go to my brother's house with all the audacity in the world. Although I wasn't a good father for you, but you take care of me because I'm your father. Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. If you don't honor your responsibilities as a father, why would I honor my responsibilities as a son? If you don't give a fuck when I need you as a son, why would I give a fuck when you need me as an old man? That's my brother's logic. But still, he used to, give him shelter when he used to come to United States. Out of duty, out of whatever you want to call. But I wouldn't have reprimanded him if he wouldn't. It's like, fuck you. Why would I help you as a father when you didn't give a fuck about me as a son? If he wouldn't have taken care of him when once a year he would have come to United States, I wouldn't have reprimanded him because he had the right to. But he still gave him shelter, took care of him that couple of months a year that he was here in the United States. Still, the guy who, due to his lack of responsibility, his lack of sense of responsibility, and his lack of caring, I was sent back from the United States, where I could have, if I had stayed here since I was 13, if I had stayed here, if my father had financially helped me somewhat, given some money to your fucking father, so I wouldn't be sent back, my life could have been a different story. graduating here from high school, finding a community college, going to some kind of college, and moving through life, especially considering that I have dyslexia. For me, as a dyslexic person, dealing with in English, writing and reading English is much easier than dealing in Farsi. Farsi, many words sound the same. This is a different story, Stephen, but in Farsi, I have dyslexia. When you have dyslexia, you probably know as a doctor, you should know, your father didn't know, that's why he didn't know why I still made spelling errors. I still make spelling errors because I have dyslexia. And in dyslexia, the kind of dyslexia that I have, every time I want to write a word, I have to pronounce it, and based on its pronunciation, write it. And going by that, in Farsi, many alphabets sound the same. We have like 3 alphabets that sound like se, s, and we have 3 alphabets that are pronounced as z, z. We have 3 alphabets that pronounce as z. And then the whole idea of writing the alphabet and sticking all the alphabet together is bad for dyslexia. So all in all, in United States, with English as my language, I would have had a much better chance of having a more pleasant life, a less tumultuous life, than going back to Iran and trying to make up for the years that I lost in education in Iran, and then going to the military service and with a Muslim, and us not being Muslims and being discriminated against, and then trying to go to an English language country like India to study in English, and then because our father still didn't want to spend the funds. Fuck you, Steven. What do you know of tumultuous life? How much of a picture do you have of my life, of our family's life, that you give yourself the permission to butt in and make a statement as if you have the facts, as if you have the full picture? Fuck you. You go to your Abercrombie and Finch and buy your high-end clothing and go to your fucking restaurants. What do you know of a difficult life? What do you know of a difficult life? Son of a doctor, the only non-retarded son of a doctor in the United States. Yeah. If 100 of what has been expended on you in life, if 100 of that was spent on me, even with my dyslexia, if 100 of what was spent on you in life was spent on me, I probably would have accomplished just as much as you, even with my dyslexia, even if 100 of what was spent on you was spent on me. Yeah, go fuck yourself, Steven.